What's the best anime in the universe? Well, if you ask me, it's Death Note. Death Note follows the story of gifted prodigy Japanese high school student named Light Yagami and his Shinigami companion Ryuk, a Japanese Grim Reaper or death spirit trapped in purgatory. Whilst Ryuk is bored one day, he decides to throw his Death Note, a book with the ability to kill anyone whose name is written in it, down into the human world for fun. Light happens to notice the book falling down and retrieves it. Upon inspecting it, he discovers its powers of being able to kill anyone as long as their name and face are known to him. And whilst your first impression might be that this is a one-trick pony kind of book that he's just received, he slowly discovers the extent of how he can use the book. Upon a string of deaths that all link to the same cause, a heart attack, the world realizes that this isn't just a coincidence, and Light with his newfound powers is deemed Kira, or killer in Japanese, by the public. What is justice to Light's eyes, and the killing of copious amounts of criminals and evil men, is murder in the eyes of others, and the Japanese authorities quickly dispatch their own brightest detective, L, to solve this mystery. In terms of plot synopsis, I'll stop here and start my argument for why I believe Death Note is the best anime in the universe. From my perspective, it's simply for the fact that the themes of Death Note present the viewers with different perspectives as to what is considered justice to the supporters of Kira, juxtaposed to those who seem to understand Light's obsession with the convention of justice. What do I mean by convention? Well, simply put, that Light slowly develops his ego as the one chosen to pass judgment on those who have done wrong to others in society. And with this reasoning, they deserve death as justice for the wrongdoings they have committed. For the supporters of Light, it's justifiable for one person to use the Death Note in this way, as innocent people have nothing to fear compared to the criminals in society. However, this begs the question of Light's powers really just being an idea of evil unto more evil. And from a philosophical perspective, one could beg the question of keeping your beliefs aligned with one another under all circumstances. Take, for example, the question of, is every war that is fought bad? If the respondent says yes, then the follow-up question is asked, was World War II a just war? And some might say yes, despite them just saying that all wars are bad. In some sense, this is what Light slowly becomes, the evil that presides over the world, as Light develops his god complex thanks to the Death Note. I believe that the quote, "heavy is the head that wears the crown," is suitable here, as the quote deals with the idea of people who are in positions of power are put under intense scrutiny by others who are onlooking. And really, who's to say that any one of us wouldn't have just repeated the actions of Light and killed off most of the violent criminals in society in just under 10 minutes of writing their names inside the Death Note? And whilst the majority of you have probably already seen Death Note and know the outcome of the series, it is, nonetheless, compelling in the sense that every viewer takes a side in their initial run through the show. I've defended Light up until this point, but I think it's time to look at the opposite side of the spectrum and examine those who deem Light to be the real villain in the world of Death Note. Light, throughout the entirety of the show, kills off an endless amount of criminals, and once he's done with the more heinous crimes, he continues his righteous judgment onto those who have committed petty crimes. If you ask yourself, is it really okay to give the powers of killing anyone at any time to one person? I think, in this instance, the majority of people would say no, as this form of extreme capital punishment, albeit from one person, doesn't reflect what we as a society have constructed thus far in the collective. I'd almost compare it to a Roman emperor giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on his subjective judgment on the fighters he was spectating. Only in this case, the Roman emperor is Light, and the awesome power is quite frankly a little overboard. And really, wherever you stand in this debacle and conversation, I think that's what makes this series so great. That some of you might be rooting for the anti-hero in Light, and some might think otherwise and see him for what he really is. Now, regardless of your position, I think it's safe to say that the majority of individuals who watch Death Note already would give it an excellent review of this genius versus genius tale of catching Light Yagami, and that's what sells it for me as the best anime in the universe. That the journey to the conclusion is filled with a tale that's so hard to stop watching from the moment you begin the story. I think, no matter who you are, if you give the show at least a chance, you'll find it compelling enough to stick around a little longer up until the point you become obsessed with the story, like so many other fans. In the case of myself, I think I binged it in a respectable amount of time of around a week, whilst another one of my friends only took 3 days after I had recommended it to them. And I think it's important to note that this was a friend who had never seen any anime to begin with. So, introducing him to anime by using Death Note as the flagship entry series definitely sparked his interest in finding other anime series that are just as compelling as Death Note. Even if you don't put Death Note as your #1 series, it is surely high up there in a majority of people's lists of best anime series that they've ever watched. Even if this somehow doesn't win best anime in the universe, you gotta give credit where credit is due. This has been my presentation for best anime in the universe, and if you haven't already checked out this amazing show, I'd advise you to go watch it as soon as possible. Thank you, and farewell.